PARATAXE Digital.
I am going to share with you some meta haiku. What's a meta haiku? What's a haiku? A haiku is a poem broken into 5, 7, and 5 syllables per line. What makes it meta? It is in some way exquisitely aware of itself. It is a poem broken into 5, 7, and 5 syllables per line. So this haiku explains what a haiku is. So it's explicitly aware of what it is. The way that my meta haiku kind of most consistently manifest is in the form of what I call book-shaped kinetic poetry sculptures. And it's easier for me to show you one of those than it is to go ahead and describe it. So this is one of the first pieces that I kind of created. I kind of wrote this, made this. I consider myself a maker of poetry. I made this and then realized I needed a new category. So in this one, it poses the question, or says, when I need to be close to you, I ask how far I am from myself. And the I is constantly moving further and further away from the self. Around the same time, I started fractaling into these during lockdown, and I wrote this one around the same time. And this one says, I always assume I'm a misplaced word away from being alone. And on the back it says, hashtag trauma bonding sucks. Yeah, for the record, trauma bonding is not bonding over having collective trauma. It's not bonding in being traumatized. It's a specific thing that happens within abusive or toxic relationships where the vacillation between stonewalling and love bombing creates an incredibly addictive, it's literally the same model of addiction as it works chemically in the mind. And unpacking that, I kind of wrote this poem. I kind of said this verbatim out loud when I was in my last rock bottom. I hope it was my last rock bottom. But yeah, so this poem says, invalidating myself for validation is contradiction. And that's not a typo. That contradiction is the core of my addiction, my addictions, my addictive self. And also within this poem itself, by adding this double D, there is now a contradiction in the form of haiku, because it's the 17 syllables printed, and yet we read 20 syllables as soon as we realize that contradiction also contains addiction. So it's kind of doubling down on the contradiction of invalidation and validation. Is this now a valid haiku? Is it not? So yeah, kind of also on the subject of addiction, I guess. This one says, where does my trauma stop? Where does my addiction start? At the same place. And now underneath this, which you never see in its entirety, is the word trauma addiction. So literally where trauma stops and where addiction starts is at the same place. So again, kind of going down going down the spiral of addiction. This is another meditation on that kind of theme, and it says, how far down will you go before you stop digging? It's never too late. And in this piece, every single frame is cut slightly smaller than the previous so that it gives this forced perspective. So it feels that it's even deeper in the page than it actually is. Also, I try and honor line breaks as much as I can within these constructions. So the first line, the first 5 syllables all exist on one single layer. The last 5 syllables exist on one single layer, and the 7 syllables in between are distributed across the various moving layers. And also on the back of this, I actually left the mechanism open so you can see a bit of the paper mechanics that are going on in there. So, yes, I'm going to show you 3 more poems. Everything I showed you so far belonged to a body of work which I generally call pretty fucking magic. And the next body of work that I have been working on and hope will work further on is under the title Utterly Fucking Wonderful. And they are similarly conceptual and meta. They all have this 10.5 centimeter square format, but they work slightly differently. So this light is really ugly. I'm just gonna, there we go. So in this one, we take hold of the tab and it says, imagine dancing through Plato's cave, 17 syllables per thought. So I kind of consider this to be a meta haiku because the haiku itself is meditating on the absurdity of trying to encapsulate big meta-philosophical thought into a 17-syllable frame. And literally the way that it works technically is what you are seeing is the shadows of the letters being cast on the back of the paper. So kind of metaphorically in Plato's cave, meditating on Plato's cave. So this next one I just have to quickly plug in. These are all prototypes. So, I've got to get the timing right on this one. So, yeah, this next one, you open it up and it presents itself to you. I have to get the timing right because I had to plug it in, so I'm just going to have to wait for it to finish going through its cycle, and then I can show it to you. Da-da-da. So. So, yeah, I'm doing okay. I'm just feeling exhausted. It'll be all right. Now, these are all answers that I give to the question how you're doing when I'm not in a place to give an honest answer. And if we count the length of the flashes, we now have dot, 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 dash, 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 dot, dot, dot. So behind these evasive answers, the literal subtext is a cry for help. So yeah, the last poem I am going to show you, I hope this works in this kind of volume context. This belongs to like another subcategory of poems which I've been making that are titled Write Me Out Loud. And specifically in this poem, there are some lines which light up when you open up the page, and they are voice deactivated, and there's a line in there which is voice activated. So I'm going to hope this works with the volume, so I'm just going to kind of hide this little so. I'm going to whisper so I don't disturb it. So what you see is it says, I just could not see something till I said it out loud. And then I say, I was being abused. So literally in this poem, you cannot see the words I was being abused until you say them out loud. And it is also a meditation on the fact that sometimes you don't realize how utterly fucked up an experience was until you hear yourself saying it to somebody else. And this practice of saying things out loud and hearing yourself say things is essential in healing. It's essential in trauma healing, in addiction recovery. And yeah, this is also a meditation for me that in communication, there is a time and a place where we need to speak our truth, and there is a time and a place where we just need to shut up and receive information passively. Yeah, that's the last poem. I'm just going to leave with this comment that I put out there first. I consider all of this to be trans poetry. I consider these to be metaphors for me, for my body. If you come to my work with preconceived notions of what a book is, what a page is, if you come to it with the expectations that it's something that you can just casually rip through, then you're not going to get very far, and probably something or someone is going to get damaged. But if you're willing to come to this and step outside of your preconceived notions, and you're willing to literally go at my pace and handle these things in the way that I ask them to be handled, then we're going to have a really good time. Thanks. These are for sale, by the way. I have a couple out on the desk out there. I actually have about 70 different poems in total. They have varying prices, so they all have like a list price, which is the full price, and then I have an intersectional pricing concept, which basically means that dependent on gender, male, female, cis male, cis female, gender, cis and trans, race, sexuality, class background and disability is like a compounding algorithm. So it means that honestly, if you're a straight white man, you're going to pay full price. And if you are a disabled, working class, trans person of color, then you get something about a 67% reduction in price. And I basically did about 7 hours of very deep dive into the statistics of pay gaps based on those things to come up with this. So they have nominal prices, but you can also come to me and I can do the maths because I like doing that. Thanks.
PARATAXE Digital.